Welcome to the You Can Make a Living in the Music Industry podcast from Nashville, Tennessee. I am your host, John Martin Keith. Celebrities, working class musicians, and people who work behind the scenes in all areas of the music industry will share their stories, encourage you, and give practical advice of ways you can make a living doing what you love in the music industry. This episode is brought to you by Edenbrook Productions. Edenbrook Productions is the company I founded to help musicians grow in their craft. Are you a songwriter, but maybe you've been told your songs aren't quite there yet? Or are your songs ready, but you don't feel stage ready? Or maybe music is your passion, but you feel imprisoned by your day job and you don't know what to do next to make your dream a reality? Well, Edenbrook Productions is here to help. We offer consulting services via phone call, Skype, and FaceTime. And for the You Can Make a Living in the Music Industry podcast listeners, we're offering an introductory 1-hour consultation special. Click on the link in the show notes to contact me, and let's get you making a living in the music industry. Hey guys, welcome to the show today. I'm very excited to introduce you to my new friend, Bobby Rymer, who is the owner of Writer's Den Music Group here in Nashville, which is a publishing company. And he has worked in the country music world for a long time. He used to work for Capitol Records in A&R, and then moved into the publishing world, and eventually started Writer's Den Music Group. And some of the artists that have recorded songs out of his catalog include Alan Jackson, Bonnie Raitt, Chris Stapleton, Rodney Crowell, Lanco, Alabama, Ricky Skaggs, and Lindsay L. I mean, that is just incredible. And one of our mutual friends, Gordon Kennedy, who was on the first episode of our podcast, is one of the writers that currently writes for Bobby with Writer's Den Music Group. And so Gordon is who connected Bobby and me to begin with. So, and you'll hear more about that in our conversation. So I'm excited for you to hear about Bobby and his journey through the music industry. And he's got lots of great information to share. So if you're looking to get into this as an artist, songwriter, or if you're looking to get into A&R or music publishing on the business side of things, this episode is definitely for you. So get your pen and pad and get ready to take lots of great notes. Hey guys, I am spending time with Mr. Bobby Rymer. How are you today, sir?
I'm good, Marty.
Thank you so much for letting me come to your office down here on Music Row. How cool is this?
Pleasure to have you.
I love getting to come to Music Row. I've been in this town for 20 years, and I've actually spent very little time on Music Row in the grand scheme of things.
Really?
Yeah, and so any chance I get to come down and be in an office down here, I'm still like a little kid. You know, you'd think after 20 years of being in this industry, like everything would just kind of be like, yeah, it's just kind of ho-hum and mundane kind of stuff, but I still get super excited when I get to come down on Music Row and just kind of be where the magic happens. You know,
it's great to hear you say that, because I am too. You know,
yeah.
It is a special place, and you can sort of feel it.
Yeah.
You know, especially when you start to learn some of the history that's gone on with the buildings up and down.
Yeah.
What buildings are left.
Sure. Well, I'll tell you what, real quick here, just for my audience to know kind of how we know each other. This is our first time to officially get to meet in person. We've talked over the phone and over email a few times.
Right.
And Gordon Kennedy, who was my first guest on this show, back if anyone needs to go back and listen to episode 1, Gordon Kennedy, he was talking about you and has known you for a long time. And he now writes for your publishing company.
Correct.
So, and he told me, he's like, you should reach out to Bobby. And so I did, and you were kind enough to come on. So I'm grateful for that. Thank you for coming to share your story and
glad you're here.
Give great advice. But this building that we're in on Music Row, can you just real quick for our audience tell us where we are and what the significance is of this place?
Well, this building, for those that don't know Music Row, I mean, it really is a neighborhood, and this was a neighborhood, and this is still a little house. You know, we've got tour buses coming up and down, and I'm not sure how much history some of these folks know, but there's a lot of nondescript houses down here where writers and artists can sort of sneak in and out and be themselves and create for the day. And
right.
And part of the reason we love this house is the writers, they feel very comfortable. They can put their feet up. It's you can spill something. You're not doing any harm. It's just I don't think you can be creative in something sterile like a dentist office, you know, so you want something that's a little funky and a little old and a little odd, but yet comfortable.
Yeah.
So this house is it's got a history of a lot of great songs being written in certain rooms and stuff. So,
Can you tell what a couple of songs that
well,
people will know would
I
have
can
written
say
here?
that the house that we're in currently, Carrie Underwood's management used to be in the basement, and she would write in some of these rooms up here.
Okay.
Back in the early day.
Oh, wow.
And I am told that the actual room that we are in used to be somewhere back in the 70s, I think early 70s. It was a little recording studio, and people like Waylon and Christopherson and some of those folks used to come up the back steps.
In this room?
In this room we're in,
Dude,
and do
this is
little work
awesome.
tapes in here. So, but you know what? Pretty much every house up and down this row
Sure.
has stories like
Of course,
that.
yeah. But just to be able to now know officially that I'm sitting in a room where Waylon was recording or writing music is
Yeah,
that's
I
awesome.
was not here, but this is a story that I have been told, and
Yeah.
it's, you're not surprised.
Yeah.
So,
So
I mean,
what did you do when? Because I know you're not officially in this building any longer. We're loaning. This is being loaned out to us to be in here. But when you were based out of this house, what were you doing here? What company was based out of here with you?
a company called Writers Den Music Group.
Okay.
That I was running and still currently.
Okay, that's what you're doing now. You're just not in this particular location.
Correct,
I got
correct.
you. And Writers Den is a publishing company.
Correct.
Yeah.
And here again, when Writers Den sort of got into being, I was looking for some office space, and there was a friend of mine that was in this building, and I rented a room from him. And after a few months, he decided to move on, and I needed more space, so I sort of took over a large part of this building. And like I said, it's a little funky, but the writers absolutely loved it. The room that we're in actually has some of that old pine paneling. And
Yeah,
it,
it's totally-
it looks right out of the 70s.
It is. It's completely out of the 70s still,
Yeah.
which I love.
And
It's so cool.
and the writers just loved this.
Yeah.
They'd come in and hang and feel comfortable, and that's what you want writers. You want to create an area that they feel safe and comfortable just to be who they are.
I mean, this is an odd question, but it just popped in my head, and I've never asked anybody this. So if someone is coming to Nashville and they're wanting to rent space on Music Row because they're wanting an office either as a publisher, as a writer, to record stuff or whatever it is, like for a house like this, because you said you were renting in Carrie Underwood's, people were renting space in different rooms and things like that. Like, what can I ask? Like, what would an estimate average be to rent either a house on Music Row or a room out of a house on Music Row? Like, is it just so varied? Like, how does somebody go about doing that to rent something on Music
Well,
Row
there
if they
is
want?
space available.
Yeah.
It's a little more expensive these days, and you could have probably come down here in 2008 or 10 and bought Music Row for $1 million, and now it's gone through the roof.
Yeah.
But so there is still space available. If you could find a little room for a few $100s, you'd probably be doing pretty good.
Yeah.
To rent a house, you're probably up in the thousands,
Yeah.
per month.
Yeah, but you can rent like a room out of a house, out of someone else's space,
You could.
and you just
You
gotta
could.
you gotta dig for
You
it.
could. You could.
Okay. Just a little something I was just curious
Yeah.
about. So, because somebody listening at some point is wanting to move to town and thinking, I want to be on Music Row, and I want to have an office, or I want to have a room or something to work out of on Music Row, and how do I go about that, and what's that going to look like to do that? So,
Yeah, I would caution them if that's what they want to do. It's nice to have an address on Music Row, and there's still a lot of business down here, but the business has expanded to different areas of the town, and really, if you've got a cell phone and a laptop, you can do a lot of business just with that.
yeah.
So it would be nice to have an office down here. I don't doubt that, but in this business, there's the day gig and the night gig, and the day gig is sort of, for my part, pitching songs and having meetings and all that kind of thing. But then there's the night gig as well, and that's out at showcases and meeting people during that time.
Right.
So if I was just coming to town, I would, I'm a big proponent of spend money smartly, and I would just look over all my options and what I wanted to accomplish and how.
Yeah. And that's good advice, and I think it's got more weight to it coming from you because, as we were talking before we started recording, you don't use this office anymore, but you do work off of your laptop and your phone,
Right.
and everything is done pretty much remotely, and you can kind of go everywhere. So wherever you can find a quiet spot to do your work is your office nowadays, and so
Correct.
to have someone of your caliber of what you've done for a living in this industry as a publisher and you've done A&R and different things like that. We'll get into all that kind of stuff, but the success that you've had and to hear from you saying you don't have to be on Music Row. You don't have to be in an office space. You can do this off of your computer and off your phone and just kind of wherever you can find a place to do it and be successful at that. So I think that carries a lot of weight. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate you being willing to say that. So, all right, all that aside, let's backtrack a minute and kind of start from the beginning. Tell us where you're from and how you got into music and kind of what set you on your journey in this industry.
You will hear me use this term on more than one occasion, but I will start with the term happy accident.
Okay.
And for me, that is the key. And we'll come back to that. So I'm from a little town south of here called Tullahoma, about an hour and a half south. Small town, wonderful place, great place to grow up. Took drum lessons, guitar lessons, piano lessons, just because. Drums sort of stuck. I guess I was a little ADD, and that sort of worked for me.
Right.
Played in bands, marching band, the whole deal. Really just loved that. And there was a little music store in that town that I worked at all through high school. And I'm not sure I ever cashed a check. I bought drums and guitars and cassettes and 8-tracks at the time and just devoured everything that I could.
Yeah.
And I remember as a young kid and teenager, I had a little record player by my bed. And every night I would put on a stack of records, everything from Haggard to Zeppelin to Benny Goodman to just Rachmaninoff, all kinds of music. And I'd put headphones on and fall asleep with that every night. Here again, not knowing why, I just loved the music. Mm-hmm. And long story short, ended up going to MTSU, which is a wonderful college. Actually, I'll back up. I was at a community college first and took a couple of psychology courses and a social work course, and for whatever reason fell into that. And then ended up going to MTSU, got a degree in social work, got married, started graduate school. My wife is a nurse and was supporting us. And I can remember just like it was yesterday. I'm sitting in this social work class, and it was just like someone poured a bucket of ice water over me. I woke up from a dream. And I thought, you know what? I really like this. I really like social work. I was wanting to work with the elderly and nursing homes and all that. But this is not my passion. And I'd had some friends that had gone to this program at MTSU, and I knew about it. So I walked home or drove home, walked in the door. My wife was there, and here again, just newly married. She's supporting us. And I said, I want to go back to school and get a degree in the music business. And she could not have been more supportive. Incredible. I mean, extremely blessed in that regard.
Yeah.
So went back, got that degree, finished it, and here comes the happy accidents part. A friend of mine that I knew had gone through the program. He called me and said, look, I'm working at this record store. I just got the gig at Capitol Records in the mailroom. Okay. Would you like me to put your name in for this position at the record store?
Okay.
Absolutely. I need a job. I need to start supporting us. So I got that gig. 9 months later, this same gentleman called me and said, hey, I just got promoted out of the mailroom at Capitol. Would you like me to put your name in for this? Absolutely. And I'll never forget coming home one day, and I'd gone to interview at Capitol, but I came home one day, and on my voice message machine, which you don't have that anymore, there was a message from someone at Capitol Records saying, hey, Bobby, we'd like for you to come in. We'd like to hire you.
Okay.
And I thought I had won the lottery.
Yeah.
I am now in the music business.
Yeah.
Still having no idea what I really wanted to do. I just knew music was all I wanted to do in some form or fashion. So started in the mailroom and was just on cloud 9.
Now, for listeners to know, the mailroom is the bottom of the totem pole.
It is where a lot of people start. I mean, it is a mail room.
I mean, it's like the movie Elf.
Yeah.
When he goes down and works in the
That's it.
That's it.
That's it.
Right.
And I just, and it was, I was blessed. A gentleman by the name of Jim Fogelsong was running the label. Another gentleman by the name of Lynn Schultz was running the A&R department, and another gentleman by the name of Terry Choate was in the A&R department. And I could not have had a better training. It was incredible. It was a different time. We weren't selling a lot of records. I think 50,000 records was a lot at that time. 100,000 was, wow, we're on our way. We've got a big hit.
Now, when was this? What year do you
This
think?
would have been,
roughly?
I started there in 85.
Okay.
1985. And not, I don't know, within a year or so after that, I got promoted into the A&R department.
Okay, let's stay there for a second. I want to stay in the mailroom for a moment.
Okay.
Because I want to talk about, because for people that are wanting to get into this business and they're wanting to move to a music city, whether it be Nashville, LA, New York, whatever it is, and they're trying to get their first steps into the industry.
Yeah.
You know, I want to work at a record label. How do I do that? Well, you start in the mailroom for most people, more than likely. Now, nowadays that I know online you can search, you know, jobs that people are looking for. You have to have a degree in certain things, whatever. But if you don't necessarily have a degree for that specific thing they're looking for, you're going to start in the mailroom. So what do you do in the mailroom, and how long do you typically have to stay there before you can get promoted up to something bigger?
You know what? Yeah, you're bringing up a good point. Here again, I did not know what I wanted to do. I just know I wanted it to be in the music business. So
Right.
I was going to get in any way I could. And you're just sort of checking every trap that you can. Just so happened I knew this guy. He called. I got into the mailroom.
Which is a relationship.
A happy accident.
Which is what this business is based on, is relationships.
100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I just knew, give me a chance and I will prove to you, you know, hey, I'm going to be the first person there, and I'm going to be the last person there, and I'm going to do anything and everything that you ask of me and more. And it's just that. And I think any opportunity that you get in and prove your worth. And I think that was key, having come from parents with good work ethic. That was just sort of instilled. But I knew I wanted to be in this business. And I think people that are in this business, they can look back, and there's certain times that you have to ask yourself, how bad do I want it? Because there's always going to be situations that come up where you are challenged, and that question comes up.
Yep.
And I just knew that I wanted this really, really bad. Still did not know my direction per se, but I just thought, all right, I'm going to work my butt off in this and prove to them that I'm a good asset. Right. And then there just happened to be that there was an opening in A&R, and they needed someone else in that position. And here again, these are wonderful people that I was blessed to work with, and they looked within as opposed to looking without.
Yeah. So how long
outside.
were you in the mailroom, you think, before
I
you
think
got
maybe
promoted?
a year and a half, something like that.
Okay.
Maybe, which I was just biding my time, waiting, you know, and learning the business.
So what do you? Okay, that's a good question. What do you learn about the music business by working in a mailroom at a record label?
You know, I got a degree in the music business.
Okay.
And it was a wonderful degree.
Yep.
And I wouldn't take anything for it. That being said, for me, there were two things that were really worth their weight in gold in this program. Number one was the internships, because I did a couple of internships, and you start to really learn the business that way and make some connections.
Right.
And people see your work ethic. And the other thing was a course called copyright law. Law is the law. But the music business, you really don't start to understand how it works until you're in it.
Right.
And there's certain things that are taught out of books, and they're somewhat broad, but you really don't understand the business until you're inside and see the day-to-day workings and the relationships and how you treat people and how things are done. The details. And so for a year and a half, I'm just soaking everything I can in, watching how deals are done and how they're treating other people and how how you find talent and find songs and all of that.
So how do you do that from the mailroom? I'm just curious, out of curiosity.
How do you do?
How do you, if you're in the mailroom, maybe you have to explain, like where you are in the building compared to where A&R and those things are. But as far as like, if you're working in the mailroom doing work over here, and you're sorting mail and whatever else happens in the mailroom, how are you learning about how deals are made?
They let me sit on meetings.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, they were absolutely wonderful. They would come back and talk to me, and I just got to 20 question them to death, and they would let me sit in on meetings.
Just to sit back in a corner and just watch.
Yep. And go to different events and stuff. I mean, so I took advantage of everything that I could while I was there.
Now, is that normal for people to do that?
It was normal for me.
Okay.
I don't know, and I know it's somewhat. Some of the people that I grew up with, they had the same experience. I can't say that that's normal now, but I just know for me that I was more than willing to get in and show them my work ethic, and they were kind enough to let me experience some things.
Yeah. So the reason I'm trying to wrap it around my head is because, like, I think Capitol Records, I think big, 12-story building, whatever it is, that's. And you're in the basement. You think mailroom, you think basement, as opposed to the executives on top doing all the signings, that kind of thing. And when I first came to town 20 years ago, I had an internship at an indie label, very small, and it was like 4 offices. It was just it was really, really small. It's no bigger than this house that we're in probably. So I'm in the mailroom doing whatever, but we're all kind of just there. We're all one room from each other, and so everybody's interacting all the time. Whereas opposed to Capitol Records is this much larger, major label entity. So that's where I'm trying to figure out.
It was somewhat smaller in the 80s.
Yeah, well, that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean we were on a building on 16th, and it was 2 floors.
Not 12.
Yeah, but it was very. I mean, this term gets used a lot in this town, but it was very family.
Yeah.
I mean, once you're sort of brought inside,
you're part of it.
You're part of it,
Sure.
and you're just included. You're not held at arm's length.
Now, do you think that's the same? It's that way nowadays, because the music industry has changed so much. If someone were to come and get an internship or a job at as in the mailroom, whatever, nowadays at a label, do you think it would have that same feel to it, family oriented kind of thing, where it's just inclusive?
You would like to think so, but it's gotten so much bigger.
Yeah.
That's today I have a very much an affinity for the smaller independent, because I think that's where you can stand out and show your worth and all that. I think that some of the larger companies, I tell a lot of college students today, if you can, try to work at a smaller company, because you'll stand out a little more as opposed to a larger company that just churns interns in and out every semester.
Right.
Not to say that you couldn't get something out of that,
Sure.
but you just sort of increase your odds at a smaller,
Right.
like what you're talking about. If you're there, they know it, and if you're
Right.
not, they don't know it. And
Right.
some of these other places, they might not see you for weeks at a time.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so then a year and a half or so, you said.
Something like that, yeah.
You graduated up to
Yep.
got to be A&R.
A&R, and
That's a huge leap, because now you're able to. That's signing artists to the label kind of a
well,
thing.
my main job was to go out and find songs for the artists that were on the label.
Okay.
And at this point, I thought, hey, this is pretty fun.
Yeah.
I like this. So I started meeting with the publishers that were in town, sort of on my level, the young guns that are coming up, and I thought, you know what, I like this. We're going out and looking for songs for Barbara Mandrell and Newgrass and Tanya Tucker and T. Graham Brown, and
Oh, man.
and I'm just going, okay, this is pretty fun. This
Yeah.
might be it.
And for people that are listening that don't know who those artists are, they need to go back and. I grew up on those artists.
Yeah.
So if you don't know Barbara Mandrell and T. Graham Brown, you need to just go do a YouTube search.
If you want to consider the music business a career, you better know your history.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely.
And they're all a part of it.
Yep.
So it was just here again. I was brought into the fold and treated very respectfully, and I tried to do my best work, and I was just having a blast.
Let me ask you this. So you're going out and you're trying to find songs for Barbara Mandrell, right? or T. Graham Brown or whoever. How would you find a song? Like what are you looking for in a song and that says, I think that fits Barbara Mandrell?
You know what? That's a great question, because I didn't get a degree in this.
Right, exactly.
So this is very much on-the-job training. So I would sit with Terry Choate or Lynn Schultz, and they would say, okay, here's what we found, and here's what we've talked to the artist, and here's what we know they're maybe looking for. And at the time, a lot of artists did not write a lot. Some.
Right.
So there was a lot of room for what we call outside cuts that the artist did not write. So we had to go really find these songs. And just learning from Terry and Lynn, I got a lot of help and direction on that.
Okay.
And, but basically you go out and find things that you're passionate about. And you come back and you go, okay, is there a home for this somewhere on the label?
Now, are you going to publishing companies around town?
Right.
To find them? Or do you ever go... Do you find people outside of publishing houses that are writers?
Not so much in that day.
Okay.
Not so much, And then we would always let the publishing companies know, hey, here's what Barbara's looking for,
right,
or T is looking for. So when you go have a meeting, they're aiming at that thing that you said you're looking for. And so it was very much on the job training, and there is no other way to do that. You just start listening to a lot of songs and critiquing them to see if they sort of check off all the boxes that you're looking for.
Is there anything that advice that you could give to someone who is wanting to be, wants to get into, song plugging or reaching out, doing the A&R job that you were doing at the time, where you're going out and looking for the songs and you're meeting with publishing companies, like when you approach them, do you say, hey, I'm Bobby Rymer with Capitol Records. I'm looking for music for Barbara Mandrell. Do you have anything for me? Like, is that how you approach it? Or how would you tell someone who is in your position nowadays that is an A&R person or a song plugger, someone that's going out and trying to find songs for an artist, or maybe even for themselves as an artist, and they're looking for songs to record? How would you guide them to reach out to a publishing company? And how do I phrase my questioning to them saying I'm looking for this kind of music for an artist? Does that make sense?
It does. You know what? This goes back to doing your homework. You better know the history of the person that you're going to go after,
okay,
and sort of who they've worked with and what they've done.
Right.
And you better know who they're working with now. You better not show up just going, hey, I'm looking for X, when in reality all they have is Y.
Okay.
So you better come educated, and it's easy to do that. You just research. It's funny. I go back to one of my first internships. I remember the gentleman handed me Billboard magazine and the country charts, and he said, Bobby, you better know every artist, every label, every producer, and it's got the writer information on there. Study this so it just becomes second nature. This is where you start. You don't need to pause when somebody asks you who's producing Trisha Yearwood or who wrote the latest hit for whoever. You better understand and know this. And I thought, oh, okay, that's your groundwork.
Great. Yeah.
This is what you need to know. So before you knock on a door or make a phone call to a company, you better understand who it is you're talking to, because if you don't, they're going to quickly realize you don't want this bad enough, or you haven't done your homework. You should know this ahead of time.
Right.
Yeah. So, if we knew we were looking for songs for, say, T. Graham Brown, who had this sort of great bluesy R&B feel to him, we knew certain publishers who had certain writers that sort of did that kind of thing.
Right.
So we immediately knew who our first calls were out to. And the publishers do too. We let them know, here's the style of music that we're looking for. Here's what we need. We need a great love ballad, or we need something we can get on drive time radio, that first out-of-the-box single. But it's educating yourself on both sides of the desk is vital.
Yeah.
Who, what, when, and where, and the history of it.
So knowing the Billboard charts is bottom line. It's like that's your starting point.
Yeah.
You need to know everything that's happening on those charts, all the names
Sure.
that are connected to the artist and the
Sure.
labels on those charts.
And for me, one of the things that I love about modern technology is take any artist, whoever your favorite artist is. I love going, okay, now who is their favorite artist?
Mm-hmm.
Who influenced them? And then who is their favorite? And just digging back, and the same thing with songwriters. You just keep digging and digging and digging. Next thing you know, you've got this long history of great music and the people that created it.
Yeah.
And that's always a good base to come from.
Sure. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. So how long were you in the A&R position at Capitol?
Up until the December of '89.
Okay. So about 4 years.
You know what? And I'll go back just a little bit. So when I got in the mailroom, I wish I could remember who said this. It doesn't really matter. But within the first 2 or 3 days, somebody came up to me and said, "Hey, congratulations, you're in the music business. You'll never get a gold watch." And I thought, what do you mean by that? And he said, "Bobby, you'll never be at a job long enough to get a gold watch in this business." And I thought, well, that's a odd thing to say, but okay, thanks, I think. Yeah. So December '89, there was a regime change at Capitol. Came out from the head offices out in L.A. An individual came in and fired everybody except the guy in the mailroom. Oops. So I'm out, and that's okay. And everybody's going, okay, you're welcome to the music. Here again, I remember somebody coming up saying, "Welcome to the music business. You've been fired. Congratulations." And I thought, well, what am I going to do now? And here again, one of these moments when you have to ask yourself, how bad do I want it? Do I want to do something else, or do I want to do this? And it was not even a question for me. I thought, all right, I'll just start being out. And here again, happy accident. And the term happy accident, you can put yourself in position to increase your odds for these things to happen. I knew opportunity was not going to come knock on my door. I had to go out and meet it. So you're out at night where things are happening. You're sort of out during the day too, having coffee meetings and just still keeping your face out there. And I was at a little market. It was lunchtime, and I was grabbing myself a little sandwich and I'm sure a Coke or something. And I bumped into a publisher friend of mine that I knew that used to play me songs. And this was probably March of '90, so I'd been out of a job for about 3 months. And it was a guy by the name of Chris Oglesby, who was at this company called Almo Irving at the time. And he said, "Hey, are you still looking for a gig?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And he said, "Well, I don't know if you'd be interested in this, but there's a tape copy position open at our company." And in reality, I thought, well, that's sort of a step back, and my ego took a little bit of a hit, but I thought, hey, a job is a job, and I still want to be in this business.
Yep.
And I went and interviewed and felt great about this company. It was at the time, the world's largest independent publishing company, owned by Herb Alpert and Jerry Moss of A&M Records fame.
Okay, yeah.
And they had just signed their 6th writer, this young kid from Mississippi called Craig Wiseman. And I had a good feeling about everything, and I was crossing my fingers. And long story short, I get a phone call, and I'm starting in the tape copy, which is the ground floor of a publishing company.
Yeah. And can you explain real quick for people what do you do in that position as in tape copy?
Yeah, I don't know if the term is still used. I mean, we still use it. I made cassettes or reel to reel. So if somebody wanted to have a pitch meeting to go to a label, and they want to play these 8 or 10 songs, they would come up with a list and say, "Hey, Bobby, can you make me a cassette or a reel-to-reel at the time of these 8 or 10 songs that I want to go play?" And I would make the cassette and type up the label and wrap the lyric, and off they go.
Gotcha.
Now, the tape copy is absolutely the best place to start at a publishing company, because that's where you learn the catalog. That's where you learn the songs. That's where you learn the writers. The writers would come down and say, "Hey, I just wrote these 3 songs. Can you put this in the system?" And so you get to spend time. You get to start making those relationships, and you can't do it otherwise. So I was down in tape copy for a period of, I think, almost 3 years. Here again, very small company. It's not like a large company where things are coming up sort of all the time. Mm-hmm. So I'm down there learning, soaking it all in, and it just so happened that Chris got a job offer elsewhere, and so there was a vacancy, and I just sort of naturally moved up to his spot. And I will say this.
And what position is that?
Song plugger.
Song plugger, okay.
Yeah. And I will say this, that's sort of when the light bulb went off for me, when I started working at this publishing company. That's when I can look back at all these, sort of my history from being a child, listening to all these kinds of records and music and just not knowing why, just because I love music. But I realized at that point that a songwriter could bring a song in, and my job was to pitch it. Not just a Music Row. I had the entire planet to try to find a place for that 3.5-minute creation. Mm-hmm. That's when the light bulb went off, and I said, okay, this is all I ever want to do. I am at ground zero, working with the creators that create these things out of thin air, and I get to help try to find a home for it. At that point, I would have said I would do this for nothing. This is it. You know, I've always thought about, to me, the music business looks like an upside-down pyramid, you know? Mm-hmm. And at the very bottom of that pyramid, the tip, what everything is resting on, what everything is built off of, it's the songs that these songwriters create. There would be no music business without the music. Right. And so I thought, okay, this is as good as it gets for me. So I just absolutely dove in. I mean, you're just blessed by being around all these creative people. And it is, I can remember one day specifically, at the time my wife and I lived in Franklin, which is sort of a suburb of Nashville.
That's where I live.
Yeah, just a few miles out.
Yeah.
And I'm driving in one morning, and traffic had come to a halt on the interstate. And I'm looking around, and I look to my left, I look to my right, I look in the rearview mirror, and everywhere I look, people have a sour look on their face. This is the way they're starting their day.
Yeah.
And I realized I cannot wait to get to work. Mm-hmm. I'm the most blessed person on this planet. Yep. And you just have to pinch yourself. And I still do that, you know. Yeah. My feet hit the floor in the morning. I cannot wait to do this because it's, people ask me all the time, how you doing? And I just say, every day's Christmas. And I learned that from a friend of mine. And when you think about it, it is, especially in my position. Sure. Every day is Christmas. I get to work with these incredibly gifted writers, and I'm unwrapping these gifts every day. And sometimes it's underwear, and there's nothing wrong with that. You need that. And sometimes it's a brand new shiny bike. Right. And so that's just the way I look at it, and that's what keeps me motivated and excited about every day in this business. Yeah.
And that's encouraging to hear that, and for listeners to hear that. You know, I think you have to have that joy and that passion for what you're doing to make it in this industry. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like if you're one of the people that has a sour look on your face and you're trying to do music for a living, and you're the guy that's got the sour face on, something's wrong. Right. You know, because how many people in this grand scheme of things get to do what we do for a living? It's a very small portion. It's a very small percentage of people in the world Marty. Get to do this. And so for those of us that do get to do it and get to make a living at it, man, we should be the happiest people in the world. You know,
it's the fun business. Yeah. You know, there's a lot of work involved.
And that should be. Let me say this, because not everybody listening is a musician, and some people are just listening for the enjoyment of hearing your story, or whatever. That should be the case for whatever you do in life. You should be the happiest person in the world doing what you do. And if you're not, then you're doing the wrong thing. You need to go find what it is. And maybe it's music.
Yeah. It's, everybody has to figure out what works for them. What worked for me was following my passion. Yeah. I didn't know exactly where it would lead. But here again, these happy accidents along the way.
And then you found it.
And then I found it.
Because you got put in that position, and you realize, okay, this is what I want. This is what makes me happy and joyful to do.
Yeah. It is, been doing this for a while, but I constantly find myself still going back to that 14-year-old kid in his room with the headphones on, listening to all these records that I was passionate about at the time. And I've still got those albums. And what really blows my mind is I can pull those albums out and look at the liner notes, and I start reading all the credits, and I'm like, I know most of these people. A lot of these people, I've got their number in my cell phone now. That 14-year-old kid, you could not
right.
You could not make him believe that
Sure.
at the time.
Yeah.
And you're just
Well, I can sit and say the same thing about knowing you now. It's like your number is in my phone, and knowing all the stuff that you've gotten to do over your career, the people I've listened to growing up, Barbara Mandrell and T. Graham Brown, and, Gordon Kennedy and all these people. And it's like, wait, I know the guy who's worked with all these people, and has helped shape their careers in some form or fashion. And, that's just as cool for me,
Yeah.
As that was for you. So
there's a reason we walk around with a smile on our face.
yeah, absolutely. So you worked for that company for a while, song plugging. So, and I've had other guests on that have done song plugging, but real quick, just for new listeners, explain what your position is as a song plugger. What would you do in that position?
It was being aware of the labels in town, the artists in town. Here again, you can pitch anywhere, but my position at the time was mainly focusing on Music Row and what was going on there. And your job is to go out and try to find a home for these songs, Your job to a certain extent for a little bit at that point was, hey, if you happen to run across a great writer, let's bring them into the fold. But my main job at that point in time was trying to find a home for these songs, and definitely being aware of all the young writers coming into town. Here again, day job, night job. Night job, you're out at these songwriting venues, just being aware of who the new kids are.
So it's kind of an opposite position of what you had as A&R at the label.
Completely.
Because at the label, you were going out trying to find the songs. And then as a song plugger, you're going out trying to pitch the songs to the people the position that you had been in previously.
It's the same job. I'm just on the other side of the desk.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And here again, you're devouring as much music as you can. That's why I can't remember where I parked my car, because there's
Right.
songs up in there.
Just out of curiosity, what would be a couple of the biggest hits that you were a part of as far as getting songs plugged, pitched, or signed?
You know what? That's a great question, and I don't know if this is. I guess it's just my makeup. I can't remember a lot of specifics. I'm sort of the type of attitude. Once that job is done, I turn around, I focus on
Keep
the
on
other.
going. Sure.
We had there was a Faith Hill song called "This Kiss."
Yeah.
That was part of that catalog. There was another song called "I Can't Make You Love Me."
Yeah.
Mike Reed, that Bonnie Raitt cut.
Wait. So what part did you have to play in those?
I
songs?
I don't know if I played any part.
Okay.
But we were there for that
While it happened.
And you remember. It's funny. Some of these songs.
I love that song. I Can't Make You Love Me.
Sure.
It's one of my favorites.
Sure. But it's funny. Some of these songs come in. When you're at this publishing company, the writer will turn a song in. You're like, wow, that's really good. I wonder if that'll ever get cut. You don't expect it to turn into something like that.
Sure.
So you hear these songs beforehand. Now there's on the other side. There's songs come in. You're like, this is a hit. This is a hit, and you never hear from it again for whatever reason. It's here again all these happy accidents. But I can remember specifically. Here's one thing I do remember. We had a wonderful songwriter by the name of Kent Robbins, who unfortunately died a number of years ago. But I remember specifically Kent would like to take some time off, just to sort of a week or two, just to sort of do nothing and just sort of recharge. And I remember he called me one time on break just to touch in. Hey, man, how's it going? I said, oh, it's going great, Kent. How are you doing? He said, I said, what's wrong? He said, I came home last night, and nobody was at home, but I could see the house before I got there because all the outside lights were left on and all the inside lights were left on. And
Let me guess. Can I just take a stab?
Sure.
Because I don't know the answer, but I'm guessing. Mm-hmm. Every Light in the House is On by Trace Adkins.
That's it.
Is it?
That's it. And Kent is telling me all this, and he just thought, man, every light in the house is
goodness.
on.
That's awesome.
And he said, it sort of, and he told me that he was just starting to write this.
Okay.
And he was telling me 2 or 3 lines of it, and I just said, Kent, hang up the phone. Hang up the phone, because I loved this idea. And he came in a couple of days later with that idea, and it was like, okay, this is incredible. What an idea. Mm-hmm. And we pitched it to Trace, and boom, there you go.
Okay, so now let's kind of get in the weeds on that for a second.
Yeah.
So can you walk me through the process? Because somebody listening wants to be a song plugger someday, or they're working at it now, trying to make that job happen. So you find a song, and you're thinking, okay, this would be a great. Did you think Trace Adkins at the time? Was that the person you thought of? Or like, what's the process from going, this is a great song, we're going to pitch it, to getting it to Trace Adkins? Can you walk me through that?
Well, now you're getting, yeah, and I can't remember this. I mean, this has been a while ago. I can't remember the specifics, but I do remember that Trace was on the pitch sheet, which is something that we had saying, okay, this artist is on this label looking for these kind of songs.
Okay.
And Trace was a new artist at the time.
Right.
And we just, I can't remember the specifics. We just thought it would be a good pitch.
So technically, you got this pitch sheet that has his name on it saying he's looking for songs.
Right.
That might fit that. And
yeah,
so
we knew the producer, and we knew Trace a little. We just knew.
Okay.
I mean, here again, you do your due diligence. You just gather this information, and we. I just remember that we thought Trace would be a good pitch. We pitched it to, I think, his producer at the time, who played it for Trace, and we got a call back.
It.
Hey, this is happened. And going sort of full circle, I remember it was cut. It made the record. They did a video, and Kent was in my office when the video was being premiered on CMT, and watching the video for the first time, and it's just sort of coming full circle. It's like, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, thank God his wife and kids left the lights on, you know.
Right.
You know? I mean, it's just, here again, you can't plan these things.
Sure.
You know.
Yeah.
But the great thing about Kent was, you know, I've heard this said from a lot of songwriters, is, you know, you do try to show up. It is a job. It is a business. You show up and you do the work, but your songwriting antenna is always up 24/7, because you never know where these thoughts, ideas are going to come from. And
they come from anywhere.
They come from anywhere at any time, you know. And so you pay attention to those kind of things.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting you say that. There's a song that one of my best friends and I wrote. Turns out I just found the song again. Like we wrote it like 10 years ago. Found a work tape of it on my computer just a few days ago. Had forgotten about it and listened to it. And I thought, dude, in my opinion, I think this is a hit song. I think this is a hit country song. And I remember when we wrote it, we thought that as well. My friend Jacob Wiley and I wrote this together. It's called Why Don't You Cry? You know, because you think the idea, when you think the phrase, you know, why don't you cry? You think, why don't you cry about it? You know, like, wow, you know, that kind of thing. But it's the opposite. It's written from a perspective, it's from the guy's perspective, the relationship has fallen apart, and she could care less. She's moving on with her life, and he's saying, you know, my life is falling apart. Why don't you cry about it too? Like, that's the idea. And, you know, and I just pulled it out yesterday. I went through and listened to it, had to rechart the whole song out because it's got some different types of chords in it that I'm not used to playing. It's not 1, 4, 5, 6 minor kind of stuff. Right. You know, and I thought, where did that idea come from? Like, we sat down in a recording studio to write that one day and just thought it was the coolest thing. I don't know where the idea came from, but I listen to it now and think, man, I still think that's a great song.
But, you know, I love what you said there. And I love doing this, Marty. I think you constantly have to revisit songs, you know, because we miss things all the time.
Yeah.
We're human. You know, this is not a science. This is an art. And I can hear a song one morning and maybe it doesn't hit me. And then maybe 2 weeks later go, how did I miss this?
Sure.
So I think that's important that we go back and just sort of occasionally revisit these things, because we all sort of get caught up in the latest is the greatest kind of thing. And it's like, well, there's some truth in that, but you know what? The latest could be 10 years old too.
Right. Sure.
So it's just good to revisit those.
Well, there's
things.
such a huge depth of music out there. You know, like there are so many songs that songwriters write.
Right.
That never get heard, even if you're signed to a publisher or to a label. The majority of them are locked in a vault and never see the light of day. and most of them are amazing songs.
Yeah.
For whatever reason they don't show up anywhere. It's just because there's only so much bandwidth,
Right.
for songs to get out for the people to hear, or however that, whatever reasoning that is, we don't get to see as much as we should some days.
Yeah, that tends to break my heart sometimes when you think about that.
Mm-hmm.
These creations that writers have put their heart and soul into, and they're sitting in a dark corner somewhere, probably never to be heard from again.
Mm-hmm.
It really does hurt, But
Now, is there a reason why to not, like, I know the answer, but sometimes I feel like I don't know the answer. It's like, if a song is so good,
mm-hmm.
and the publisher knows it, if it's signed to a publishing company, and the publisher knows it, why would you not continue? I know that there's got to be always new stuff. There's
Right.
always more. I got that.
Right.
But if you just know, like, there's something to the song, like, why would you not continue to try to find a place for it somewhere along the way?
It's a great question. I don't know if this is the answer, but this is my answer. I think a lot of songs have a timestamp on them because they're written in the current language with the current chord structure and the current melodies,
Mm-hmm.
and time and music changes. It's a matter of fact. It just changes. It's not a static thing. So I think that's true to a certain extent. I think that well, I'll come back to this. I think that it's tough to write a classic. I Can't Make You Love Me. I think that would work pretty much any decade, and it's those are rare songs that sort of live. I think for some people, I've always said maybe the song is there, but maybe the demo will turn someone off, and it's very dated.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's a great song, some people might not get to it because the demo offends them because it was done back in the day when they had these guitar tones or this reverb sound. So for me, I'm a huge fan of when you go into the demo world, if the song will take this, you use acoustic instruments. You don't go crazy with the reverb. You maybe do what I call a glorified work tape. And that way, that song potentially has a longer shelf life because you're not dating it with certain sounds and tones that could. But here again, going back to, and I don't remember the writer specifically, but back at Alamo at this day, a writer turned in a song, and it had, who was the gentleman that the TV show Hawaii Mustache drove?
Tom Selleck.
Tom Selleck,
Yeah.
and his character was
Magnum
PI. Mm-hmm. So the song had, I'll hunt you down like Magnum PI.
Okay.
And I thought, you know what? You just put a timestamp on this. This is because this show will be over and then it will be dated.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, in situations like that, use a timeless character.
Right.
There's other. So you just have to be careful with some things like that. So I think a lot of these, you'd be amazed. A lot of songs you pull out and you're like, okay, it's the wrong language at the time, and it sort of dates it a little bit.
Sure.
But I agree with you. I know for a fact there's a lot of great songs sitting on a shelf, and you hope, and you hear these great stories every once in a while of these songs that have been sitting around for 5, 10, 15 years, and somebody finds it and discovers it and said, okay, that's what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And we all celebrate that.
Yeah. So nowadays, we'll talk more about Writer's Den here in a minute, but as a publisher, when someone sends you a work tape, how do you, you just explained, kind of make it more acoustic and, just be kind of conservative on
Right.
certain tones or whatever. I hear some people say, just give me a guitar vocal, just a piano or a piano vocal. And that's good. That's all that I want because that helps me be able to decide whether or not, where the song could go. I hear the other side of things where I want it as polished, as finished. I want it to sound like the actual CD that's going to be released to the world, and get it that way. And then yours sounds like you're sort of in the middle. You're kind of in that in-between spot. And can you talk to which of those three I'm assuming
No, I know where
the
you're
middle
going.
is the
Yeah.
best for you, but why does one work better than the other, or why would you?
Well,
Go ahead.
the guitar vocal, piano vocal, I personally, that is my thing. I love that. Now,
Just that.
I love that.
Okay.
Now if the song is something that needs a fuller band, more you're driving up tempo, you might want to put some more in there. But by and large, a lot of things can get by with just guitar vocal. And this is why I love it, because that's the way I hear it when the writer plays it for me. Mm-hmm. And there is nothing getting in the way of the lyric. I get to focus on the lyric and the melody. And that's what everything is built off. I love that. It's just bare bones. Because you can, I remember a producer told me one time, I asked him this question. I said, how do you want these songs that you're going to play for these artists? How would you prefer them? And he said, Bobby, I would prefer a guitar vocal. And here's why. If you bring me a fully produced song, and I know, and I love this song, but I know I'm not going to produce it that way, I've got to sit with this artist and start subtracting, telling what I'm going to take away. Mm-hmm. And they, a lot of times, look at me puzzled. They can't subtract. It's a hard thing to do. You're hearing it in one way,
right,
and we're going to do it a completely different way. If you give me a guitar vocal and I say, we're going to start adding this, they get it.
Sure.
They fall right into it. Yeah. That's how I want it. Now, there are other people in town that sometimes you have to give them the record.
Right.
Because for whatever reason, they might not be able to hear what it could be. Mm-hmm. And I've worked with writers that made great, their demos were better than the record. Their demos were the template for the record.
Right.
And it was a great song, but it was a great produced demo. And they just turned it into a master. Mm-hmm. I get that, but I'm a big fan of the stripped down mm-hmm. version for a number of reasons. A lot of times, the young songwriters, they don't have a lot of money, and I'm a huge fan of not spending money unless you absolutely have to.
Right.
And the marketplace where it is right now, to be honest, I cannot remember the last time I went into the studio and hired a band and recorded songs to be pitched. Mm-hmm. That, I hope it comes back to that, but right now that's really not where it is. And this town is absolutely full of what I consider the best pickers and players there are. And it's tough to be a musician in this town these days because of that. Mm-hmm. So I'm a huge fan of guitar vocals, or what I call glorified work tapes. Do a couple of guitar passes, a lead vocal, maybe a harmony part, and most songs can be pitched that way.
Can you do like a guitar and a piano and a vocal? Like, would you suggest that, or would you say no? Or what's your?
It depends if the song asks for it.
Sure. I'm just trying to think. What would be your limit? Say this is too much. There's too many instruments at this point. It's just starting to get in the way. And
well, what I prefer.
Right.
But here again, the song will tell you what it
dictates.
Needs. Yeah, and it's hard to say only do this.
Yeah.
If a song,
and it's different for everybody.
Correct.
Some publishers are going to say, I want the full thing,
right,
like you talked about, and some want what you want.
Right.
And it's not wrong either way.
Correct.
Everybody's got their own opinion to it, but I think it's important for listeners to know.
But it breaks my heart when I meet a young writer and they've dressed their songs up in a way that don't need to be dressed up, mm-hmm. and they've spent a lot of money that maybe they didn't need to. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So now you're a company with Writers Den.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you switch from the previous company into creating Writers Den?
So I was at this company called Almo Irving for 14 years. Started there in 90. In 2000, Universal Music acquired it. And then I'd moved up to creative director, and there at the very end, I'd moved up to running the Nashville office. And then Universal finally took it all under place, and another gentleman mm-hmm. came in and took that over. Now,
let me ask you real quick.
Yeah.
Moving up the ladder in that company,
mm-hmm.
up to running it.
Mm-hmm.
So you started off in the tape room,
copy,
tape copy, up to running the company.
Right.
Every time you move to a new position, that's because someone else left. basically, or
yes, either a position was created, or in the case of David Conrad, who had founded the Nashville office of Almo Irving, he had left to go to a label.
Okay.
And so I got moved up into his spot.
Yeah. So for people listening that are wanting to get into working at a company like that, you don't walk in and go to the top or even in the middle. Like you start at the tape copy room or in the mailroom, depending on what type.
Unless you're Doug Howard, then you start in the tape copy, and then you go to law school and you come back and you run the company.
Yeah, right.
Which I think Gordon maybe referenced in his.
Yeah, Gordon referred to him as well. So I just want people to know, because I don't know if people understand all the time that this is a hard business to get into, and it's all relationship based for the most part. There's you have to have talent if you're on the creative side of things, but on the business side, you don't just walk into and kind of take over on some company. You got to work your way up, but it's relationships, and it's someone leaving and giving you an opportunity to move into something higher that you wouldn't have gotten into had that person probably left or moved to something else within the company as well, that kind of thing. So, but trying to let people hear that from your perspective.
I hate to say it, but resumes mean absolutely nothing in this business.
No, people
just don't even give it to us. Just throw it in we might look at it, and then it's going in the trash. Okay. It's going to be, we're going to pick up and call who you know or who you've worked with or whatever reference or you're going to. It's that one-on-one that you trust these people that that you've built relationships with, and you find out who has impressed them.
Well, just like us sitting here today, had Gordon Kennedy, if I didn't call you and say, "Hey, Gordon Kennedy referred me," that was my
opened
in,
the door, right?
Right. If I hadn't done that, we wouldn't be talking here today, more than likely.
Right.
But because you trust Gordon,
right,
and his friendship, and he and I have been friends for a few years, and so that there's just an amount of trust within that allows us to do that. Correct. And so we get to sit here and talk and build a friendship and a relationship with each other doing this, so this is how it works.
Welcome to the music business.
That's exactly right. So, all right. So now, you've moved, and tell me about Writer's Den, please.
Yeah. So, Writer's Den. Wow. So when I left Almo, I had the opportunity to take some time off, and I did. I took almost a year off just to sort of, you don't really realize at the time. I mean, yes, it is the fun business, but you don't realize that when it stops, you have a moment to breathe. You're exhausted. And so I took a little time off, tried to figure out what I wanted to do next. And I started a little publishing company working with a couple little writers sort of on my own. And but then I got a phone call from an individual starting a brand new label, and they wanted me to come on board and start the publishing wing of that. And that was in 2007. And it was a company called Montage, and it was privately owned by an individual out of St. Louis. So I came on board, started that, and that lasted for, I think, maybe 3 or so years, something like that. And then the gentleman that was funding all of this decided to close the label. But he apparently liked the publishing company and left that alone. Well, at that point in time, the publishing company was called Montage. I changed the name to Writer's Den. Sort of didn't want to be associated with a sinking ship kind of thing. Sure. And I liked the term Writer's Den. The office we had at the time, it looked like a big comfy den, and I knew that writers liked that comfortable feeling. So Writer's Den sort of came into play. And then that lasted for a couple more years until the gentleman out of St. Louis said, "You know what, I'm done. I don't understand this business." And he didn't. And he closed it. And then about 9 months later, I met another business person. And long story short, we acquired Writer's Den, that catalog, and we started it up again. And that ran up until, this is 2020, that ran up until the end of 2018. And through some unfortunate events that happened, he is out, and I have acquired the Writer's Den catalog myself, so I've got it all.
Okay.
So the Writers Den, this company, I started with song 1, and we're up to close to around 3,000 copyrights now.
Okay.
And so
who are some of the writers or songs that people would know that are a part of your catalog now?
wow. You Don't Have to Love Me Anymore, Alan Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
We've had a, you know what, I'm gonna pause here for just a second. So there is, and I'll come back to this. We've had some Bonnie Raitt cuts, but I want to talk about one specifically if I can.
Sure.
So, and this is speaking specifically to the writers, that you have to write what you know, what you're going through. So there's a writer that I'd signed by the name of Bonnie Bishop, and I'm at this meeting elsewhere outside the office, and I get this text. And I don't know if I've ever told this story publicly, but I get this text from Bonnie going, "I'm in your office. I need to see you now." And I could tell by something's.
Mm-hmm.
So I left this meeting and showed up at my office, and Bonnie was sitting in there, and I could tell she was very upset. And I thought, we need to talk. Went in and closed the door, and I said, "What's going on?" And she said, "I'm leaving my husband. He doesn't even know yet. You're the first person to know." And we sat in there for probably a couple of hours. And we talked and we cried and we talked and we cried. And at the very end of that conversation, as she tells it, I got this little smirk on my face. And she said, "What are you smiling about?" And I said, "There's going to be a great song that comes out of this, if you're willing to go there." And I guess it was about 2 weeks later, she had a co-write with a gentleman by the name of Al Anderson. And the very first song that she wrote was about that experience. And it was pitched to Bonnie Raitt, and she cut it. And for me, I tell writers all the time, you don't have to make anything up. Write your story. You've got everything you need in your life. We don't need another love song in this town, but we've never heard your version of it. And that was a valuable lesson for all of us to learn right there. Especially with these emotionally places, if a writer is willing to go there and keep peeling away the layers of the onion, you don't have to make anything up. Your story has already been written. You just have to tell it.
Right.
So it's whether you're experiencing moments of joy or moments of sadness or sorrow or whatever, just take that and don't write from the brain, write from the heart, and the truth will come out. And I think people, when they hear the truth, they know it and they respond to it. I think if you write too much from the head, it's depending on the song, but if you write too much from the head, it's just people see that as well. And
Sure.
Anyway, it's but we've had cuts by Bonnie and Alan Jackson and some number of songs placed on the TV show Nashville.
Yep.
Just a multitude of folks. And here again, this is fighting for, as we were talking earlier, if I don't have another song put in this catalog, I've got enough.
Sure.
I mean, the hits are there, the songs are there. Going back to some of the discussion we were having earlier, I would probably do this for nothing. But we are fortunate that we're getting paid for this and we're making a little bit of money. And I've got a smile on my face all the time, even though we hear the word no all day long. You've got to be comfortable with that. And it hurts the first few hundred times or 1,000 times you hear that, because we get rejected all the time. But when I hear the word, when I hear the word no, I hear not now.
Right.
Not now. And
why do you think it is that, you've got, like I said, it's about 3,000 songs in your catalog, and songs that are hits, because you've got Alan Jackson and Bonnie Raitt recording your songs. They're hits, If you know that you've got that caliber of songs and that number of songs, what is it about someone saying no Like, why would, I know it's really random or really.
No, that's a great question.
Like, why would, like, what tells someone to say no to a song that you know is a hit?
Well, here again, it's an art. Yeah. It's not a science.
And it's an opinion.
It is 100% an opinion. And a songwriter can come in and play me a song, and I can love it, and then go play for another person, and they don't, and we're both right and we're both wrong. Mm-hmm. So I think it helps in this business if you can, here again, it's about doing your homework. Find out people that sort of have similar taste to you, and bring those people in close. And if you, in the course of this, when you find people that have different taste, understand what that taste is and what they're looking for. There's songs that I absolutely love in this catalog that have not found a home yet that I will continue fighting for. And there's songs in this catalog that aren't necessarily my thing, but I still think they have a lot of potential. Mm-hmm. And you have to put your personal sort of feelings aside sometimes and pitch those songs. Mm-hmm. We are constantly pitching songs that we're maybe not huge fans of, but we understand that there's value in those songs, and they can still find a home. It's an educated guessing game.
Sure. I think one thing that's important for people to understand too is when you're writing and pitching a song, that if you're writing a song that would fit Bonnie Raitt, mm-hmm. you have to know Bonnie Raitt's style. Mm-hmm. You don't write a song for Luke Bryan or Jason Aldean and then pitch it to Bonnie Raitt, or vice versa. Because it's two different things. Luke Bryan is this pop country, bro country, dancey kind of music.
Right.
Bonnie Raitt is not that. She is a bluesy,
older, white, female, bluesy. There's a lot. She's lived a lot of life.
Yeah. So, it's just two different things.
Sure.
So you got to know if you're writing a song for an artist, you don't write something you think, that's a Bonnie Raitt style and pitch it to Luke Bryan.
Correct. Sure.
Or vice versa.
Sure.
So you got to know your audience.
And you be honest, you have to be careful pitching to Bonnie, because she's going to make, when she cuts it, it's going to be a Bonnie Raitt song.
Right.
So you better be careful and not picture what is so obvious, And I think that's true of a number of artists. Chris Stapleton, you wouldn't pitch him. You just have to, here again, you have to do your homework. Mm-hmm. You can't. Here's a good example. So back at Alamo, there were some writers that wrote this song. We thought, and they thought this is a Dixie Chicks smash. So they went in and they demoed it like a Dixie Chicks record, and it sounded great. And we pitched it to the Chicks, and they put it on hold. They fell in love with it, and it almost got cut, but it didn't. So we thought, let's go try to find another home for it. Well, as we start playing it for people, the reaction we got was, wow, this sounds like a Dixie Chicks song. Have they? Yeah, they heard it and passed on it. So in their mind, they thought, ooh, something must be wrong on it. They passed on it. That's not so you have to be very careful when you create these things, and that you're not creating these things that are too much like them or on top of them. Because most, don't pitch what they've done, pitch what they might be doing. You sort of try to stay ahead of that a little bit. You don't want to pitch what was on the last record. You want to pitch where you think they might go to the next one.
Yeah, that's a good point, but that's also like the hardest thing to do.
Yeah.
That's almost an impossible. I say that it feels like it's an impossible task, and I've been in that position where, because I had some songs I had written and recorded. I had met a guy that was working with Rascal Flatts. This was years ago, like their third album, something like that they were into. And I asked him, I was like, hey, can I send you a couple songs just to get your thoughts on it, that I thought might fit them. And he listened to it. He liked the songs. He said, that sounds like what they've already done.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they were songs I had recorded for myself at the time, but I was like willing to pitch it to them anyway.
Right.
He's like, think 5 years ahead. Write something
Right.
that they're going to record 5 years from now. I'm like,
Right.
how on earth do I think 5 years ahead? Like, how do you even do that? It's like an impossible task. I know what he's saying,
Right.
but how do you accomplish that? How would you tell someone, when you tell somebody that, like, what do you mean?
Yeah. Real quickly, if I could, for your
Sure.
listeners, because I just realized the Bonnie Raitt song that we got cut out of all that was a tune called Not 'Cause I Wanted To.
Okay.
So please go back and listen to that.
Sure.
It's a beautiful piece of work. So you bring up a good point. My personal opinion, I think it's, how do I say this? I'm not sure it's the best thing for writers to sit in a room and try to write for a certain artist. To me, and there are some people that are great at that. Mm-hmm. But you're manufacturing these things. I've always been of the opinion that I will make my writers aware of what the marketplace is looking for. But when you go into that room, and if there's something coming out of that creative faucet, you write the heck out of it. I don't want to tell a writer what to write, because I think that sometimes puts them in a corner. Mm-hmm. That would make them uncomfortable, but I will make them aware of what the marketplace is looking for. But I'm just a huge fan of, here again, do your research, be aware of all this stuff, but then go into your creative zone and write what you feel, write what you believe. I've said before that I'm not looking for the next Craig Wiseman. I'm not looking for the next Gordon Kennedy. I'm looking for the first you.
Right.
Because you don't look like anybody else. You don't walk like anybody else. You don't talk like anybody else. Your life is unique to you. And going back to the truth, draw from what you know, what you feel, the experiences that you've gone through. Write your dreams. Write what scares you. Write all that stuff. Mm-hmm. It's going to be familiar to all of us, but it's going to be unique to you. And that gives it a chance to stand out. So, here again, there are people that are good at of just making stuff up and writing for a marketplace. I think those are pretty much rare. But I think the best advice to a young writer is write what you know. I mean, it doesn't get any more complicated than that. Understand the business. Learn all you can. Learn what the marketplace is looking for. Here again, it's the music business, not the music I'll do whatever I want and I hope it works.
Right.
So you understand the business part of it.
Yeah.
And if you're like any other business, if you're making shoes and you're making these beautiful brown shoes and they fit well and they feel good and they're comfortable, but all the marketplace wants is black shoes and you're not going to adapt, you're probably going to go hungry. Mm-hmm. So you're doing this thing, just maybe turn it a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Still do what you're doing, just change the color a little bit.
Just be aware, hey, there is a marketplace and they need this.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's big in the TV, film world, music for that. So like when you're working on the show Nashville.
Yeah.
Like there's specific types of songs that they're wanting, a certain sound that they're looking for,
right,
to fit that show.
Yeah. Now, if you're getting into sync world, you better forget the guitar vocal.
Oh yeah, no, I'm in the sync world, so it's got to be. Yeah, there's no time for demos.
Right.
You have to turn in something that's completely finished, ready to go, because they have to have it in 24 hours.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. You're exactly right. Yeah. That's a fast moving world.
Yeah. Now, do you work in that at all?
Some.
Okay.
Yeah. But
what has your experience been with that? I'm just curious, like how that works for you.
It's well, I've got a few contacts, and I get these emails or phone calls. Hey, we need this by tomorrow at 1:00. Mm-hmm. And you have to. Here again, you better know your catalog, and so you have to go through that catalog, and you have to figure out, okay, where is all the publishing stand? Who owns the master? Because all this stuff has to be clear before you send it out their way. Mm-hmm. So it's good to sort of know your catalog and maybe already have that stuff over in a corner somewhere.
Yeah.
Or you better have a writer that you can give them that information and they can create this thing in a box and present it to you in 12 hours, kind of thing. Yep. And if you can do that, you can carve out your own little niche. It's Shelby Kennedy, who is one of Gordon's brothers. talking about the way the business has changed. I'm sort of moving here on you a little bit.
Yeah.
It used to be when somebody lost a job or was looking for a job, it was sort of, Shelby said, it was like musical chairs. If somebody got up and moved over here, there was a chair to be filled. In this music business, there is no other chair. And Shelby said, we have to learn how to make our own chair now.
Right. Just in the music industry
Correct,
in general.
to create our own chair.
Right.
So coming back to the sync world, if you've got that capability and that talent and you can start building your own catalog, make your own chair. Find out what makes you unique. Find out who needs something like that. Mm-hmm. If you're a songwriter and you better understand what it is you do and be very honest with yourself and who might be looking for something like that. Mm-hmm. And if you're doing what everybody else is doing, it might be good work, but it might not stand out.
Yeah.
You just have to, here again, we need the first you, not the second anybody else.
Right. Yeah, sync is very interesting and very specific. There's only 5 or 6 genres that they typically work with. Mm-hmm. There's only 5 or 6 themes that they typically work with. And so you're limited in a good way. It gives you a target.
Right.
There's certain things that you have to hit, specifically in sync music, if you're going to be successful in it.
Right.
And the ability to turn over music really, really quickly and have it high quality and those types of things. So
it's really about creating a mood.
Yeah.
That because the action is happening on the screen, mm-hmm. and they need this mood underneath to support that.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you this: for someone that writes music for sync, now I know that you can be signed to a publisher and write music for sync, because for the writers that work with you, you're pitching their music for sync opportunities when that comes up. Mm-hmm. A lot of people in the sync world don't want artists and writers to be signed to a publisher. They want you to own your own publishing. You're a one-stop shop, that they can clear it straight directly from you and not have to worry about getting someone else to sign off on it. Mm-hmm. 2 or 3 different publishers, mm-hmm. if you got multiple writers. Mm-hmm. So would you ever work with, for people listening that are wanting to, they live in the sync world, but they also want to write country music, or mm-hmm. they want to write pop music, and they mm-hmm. want to be signed to a publisher. They're scared to sign to a publisher because then they feel like, I can't write sync any longer because I'm no longer a one-stop shop. Would you ever work with people in that position, on a single song contract basis?
Sure.
To where they still own their own publishing for this world over here, but you can work with them over in this world here.
One of the most important phrases I learned getting into this business was that everything is negotiable.
Yeah.
And so, here's another great thing about sort of where we are in this day and time, that when I got into this business, here's the way the deals are structured, and that's it. They're not going to move too much. Mm-hmm. Nowadays, everything is negotiable.
Okay.
So, I'll never say no, but I'll say, let's talk about it and see if we can figure out a way that works and makes sense to us. Mm-hmm. I will say this to your point, that I agree. Music supervisors, they want everything ready to go. They want to make one phone call if they even have to do that. And it is good if somebody owns the master and the publishing and they've created it. It is a one-stop. Yep. But I was told early on by a music soup, he said, don't give me anything but yes songs. I went, what do you mean? He said, if I make a phone call and I ask you to use this, all I want to hear is yes. I want everything to be pre-cleared. So if we've got songs that have 2 or 3 publishers and writers and master owners, before I pitch that, I make sure everything is pre-cleared. So they know that if they want to use this song, they can. So I avoid that taking 3 or 4 days to get an answer.
Right. You're going to go talk to the other publishers and the other writers ahead of time.
Absolutely.
And get their sign off on it.
Absolutely.
Yes, we can do this. And then you pitch it to the supervisor.
That way they know they can make one call and they're good to go.
Yeah.
So we avoid that. You want to avoid that situation where, I think so. I'll get back to you in a day. Too long.
Yeah.
Move on.
So what you're saying is that once you've talked to the other publishers and the writers and they're saying, yes, we'll agree to this, you're calling the supervisor to pitch the song, and then so the supervisor still has to call those other publishers and writers and
not at that one point. I mean, at that point they'll say, "Wait, there's three." I'll pitch a song, and they'll say, "Well, there's 3 writers on here, and there's 4 publishers. I've talked to them all. We're pre-clear. We're ready to go." So they make a call to me if they want to use it and say, "Hey, we're going to use this. Can we put this in the film?" Yes, I told you it's already pre-cleared, and then we'll start the paperwork and all that stuff.
Okay.
But all they have to do is just quick email, phone call, and they're good to go.
Yeah. But then at that point, you got to go get the signatures for the other people, though, so it's all on paper. But it's all they've all said ahead of time.
No.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. Good to know.
So there's again, everything's negotiable, and there's ways around it if you want.
What are you looking for in songwriters when you're wanting to sign somebody? You're considering signing somebody. What is it that you're looking for? So somebody listening is a songwriter, and they're like, I'm looking to get a publishing deal as a country writer. Now, is country all that you do?
No.
You do everything.
No. This is where I go back to this 14-year-old kid sitting in his room with headphones on.
Yeah.
And a song comes in, and I get to pitch it wherever.
Right.
I put it to you this way. If it's got a melody, I've said before, if I can whistle it, I'm in.
Okay.
If it's got a melody and a lyric that does something to me, I'm in. Let me go with it.
So what genres do you typically work with? Like, what are your main things that you like to try to pitch for?
We're on Music Row, so obviously you try to do that. But Americana, bluegrass, blues, jazz, R&B, gospel, Southern gospel, Christian. It's this 14-year-old kid that I keep referencing that's going, wow, I want to listen to that tonight on my headphones. It's that. It's just something that moves me. So what am I looking for in a writer? Marty, the most honest answer is I have no idea. I absolutely have no idea. Going back to what I said before, I know I'm not looking for the next whatever.
Right.
I'm looking for the first you.
Right.
You know, there are artists out there that you know within the first few syllables who that artist is, whether it was Waylon or Willie or Stapleton, whoever. You just know. They don't have to say who this is. They have that thumbprint. And I think great writers have that same thumbprint. We can hear somebody's song on the radio, and we can probably, that writer was a writer on that song. Has to be, because I can hear them, kind of thing. So I'm looking for that, whatever that is, and I'm looking for someone that tells me a song that I've heard 1,000 times, told from a slightly different angle. I don't know what that is. You just sort of know it when you hear it.
Right. The it factor.
Yeah, and I've never heard a great breakdown of what that is. You know it.
Yeah.
And I don't want to hear a breakdown.
Sure.
Again, it's when you go to a museum and you see a piece of art that speaks to you, you don't necessarily, it just does. And you just know that, wow, who did this? I want to see what else they've done.
Let me ask you this. How would you suggest someone approach you that's looking for a publishing deal? Like, they want to be a writer, a staff writer, or an artist writer, however that works for them, but they're wanting to get a publishing deal. How would you suggest that they reach out to you? Like, what is that connection? I mean, obviously relationships. The reason I'm talking to you is because of Gordon Kennedy. So there's that. Does it have to be a reference from someone else to get to you? Can someone just walk up, knock on the door, or give you a phone call? You know what? I
would love to say yes, but the fact of the matter is there's 24 hours in a day, and those hours are taken up by my family, my wife. It's taken up by, you got to sleep a little bit. It's taken up by the writers that I have a loyalty to, that I'm working with. And then there's the job of just having meetings and being out. So there's not a lot of whole extra. So I used to tell people, just call me. Email, I'll listen to everything. I'm a sponge. But you can't do that and be productive to everything else that you need to be productive to. So I do a number of workshops, seminars, conferences around the country through the year. So I'm at those. And when I'm at those, grab me. I'm in the hallway. That's why I'm there, to discover things.
Okay.
But usually we hear it's word of mouth. I would hear, Gordon would call me and go, oh, I just ran across this great writer, or someone from ASCAP or BMI or CSAC, or people that we know. It's that nice little network. You you hear about it, or I occasionally stumble upon it out at these venues that we frequent.
So let me ask you this. So if you're going to a writer's night, how often do you hear a song and go, I love that song, I'm going to talk to that writer? Like, does that happen very often?
It doesn't happen very often, but it happens occasionally.
Okay.
And it usually happens when you're not expecting it.
So what would you say to the people, if you're going, how many writers' nights a week would you go to on average, you think?
Now, 1 to 2 nights a week. Used to be every night.
Okay. So say you do 2 a week, and there's usually, let's just say 4 people at a writer's night. So there's 8 people. Out of 2 nights and 8 people, how many of those people do you think you would talk to?
Boy, you're putting numbers. Rare. I mean, it's
rare. Okay,
sure.
So my question is, for the people, there's 8 people that you've listened to in a week, and you're going to listen to for songs. Like that's your purpose. Is you're going to listen for music, right?
Right.
Because you're thinking, this might be someone that I would be interested in working with. That's the reason why you're doing this, right? If there's 8 people over 2 nights that are not getting your attention, why are they not getting your attention? What are they not? What is it about their song? Maybe the way they're playing, their personality, their vocal. What is it that's turning you off to say, not right now?
For those that know me, for those that have met with me, I close my eyes when I listen to music because I want to see the movie that you've created, hopefully, or feel the emotion that I'm supposed to be feeling.
Okay.
I want to get into it, just like a movie. And it's one of those factors. I'm not seeing it. I'm not feeling it. Plain and simple.
Yeah.
And, there's still a few clubs in town that I'll sort of sneak in the back door and listen to a round or two, and then I can leave and nobody knows I'm there. And I still do that quite a bit. I don't have to spend the whole evening there, but I'm just constantly looking for something that's going to just speak to me. I know I'm beating a dead horse here, but it's tell me a story I've heard before 1,000 times that an angle that I've never heard it from.
Yeah.
And it's and it could be, Marty, it could be, maybe it's not the song per se, but it could be just a couple of lines in that song that I thought that's new and fresh that I'll go, okay, let's talk. Because maybe that's the tip of the iceberg of something.
Sure.
So I'm not necessarily looking for a completed work,
Okay.
But potentially maybe just bits of it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there could be some potential there.
So that's good to know, because that you're thinking maybe here's another song based off of that couple lines. So let's scrap the rest of it. Let's take that thing that stuck out.
Yeah, you know
and
what?
Create something different.
Yeah, and going back to Craig Wiseman, Craig, I can remember early on, he would come in and you just knew he was just full of talent. And Craig would come in and he'd play these songs and that's pretty good, and then wow, that's really good, and that's pretty good. But you could watch over time. He would come in and bounce these things off of us, and maybe there would be a line or 2 or 3 that you might suggest tweaking. But then over time, as he worked at his craft, well, there's really nothing to say here. It's complete. And it got to a point, Craig didn't really need us in that capacity anymore. He had honed his craft to where he knew he had that third eye and that third ear that he could look at and go, okay, this is right, this is wrong. And he was building these things that were ready to go. And, with Craig, I mean, he's a perfect example of not only did he have God-given talent, but he had incredible work ethic. And there was only one thing that you can control, really. You can't control whether you've got God-given talent, but you can control a work ethic. And he was at the top of the list in that.
Yeah.
He worked hard at his craft.
Yeah. Do you do single song contracts? Do you prefer to do a year-long contract, or?
I prefer to sign writers. I have done over the course of these years maybe a handful of single song. I'm not looking for single songs. I'm really looking for writers in long-term relationships. I don't like signing writers for short term. I just think you need to give in most instances, you want to go long term, but sometimes it doesn't work out, and you part your ways. I prefer to court a writer or date a writer for a period of time because we have to know each other.
Yeah, before you sign them.
Correct. And there's been times in the past where you sign writers, and for whatever reason it doesn't work out, and you have to go, okay, we cannot help ourselves. We cannot help each other. We need to part ways and move on. No hard feelings. But typically, Ben Cooper, there was a writer I signed by the name of Ben Cooper, and he was just coming out of Belmont College, and I heard bits and pieces, and we just started meeting, and we kept meeting, and we met for probably 11 months before it just felt like the time to do it. And I introduced Ben to Gordon, and they did a lot of writing together, and there's a Ricky Skaggs album by the name of Mosaic.
Oh, yeah.
And they're all over that record.
Yeah.
And it was just that, here again, I just had a gut feeling about Ben, and I liked his work ethic and what he was doing, and I had a gut feeling that he and Gordon would work together, and it created this thing. And I wasn't trying to analyze anything; it was just all from the gut.
Yeah.
So
in that 11-month period before you signed him, and you guys are just meeting and getting to know each other, is he writing songs to play for you that you're just listening to? You're not committed to anything.
Correct.
You're just saying, "Let me hear what you've got."
Right. Now, let's meet every couple of weeks, and let me hear what you've done, and let's talk about it, and let's start breaking the songs down and figuring out what works and what doesn't work, and you could just see the growth and the commitment, and that's going back to what am I looking for. Let me answer it this way: I'm looking for a certain amount of talent. I think that's got to be there, but more than anything, I'm looking for a work ethic. I think you can come to this town with some talent, and if you have the work ethic to apply to that, you can turn it into something. I think there's you can probably ask anybody in this business. We all know people that are just stupidly blessed with talent, but they didn't have the work ethic, and coulda, woulda, shoulda.
Yep.
And we all know people that have some talent and an incredible work ethic, and they're killing it.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I keep coming back to, the whole title of the podcast, You Can Make a Living in the Music Industry. The people that are able to make a living in the music industry are those of us that never give up.
Right.
When it gets hard and others have walked away and they've given up and gone back home, those that have stayed and continue to fight for it are the ones who
I mean, there is no guarantee in this business.
No.
Most other businesses, you get a degree in mechanical engineering and you go off and you do your theme because it's just black and white.
Yeah.
In this business, it's a wing and a prayer. But it's sort of like the lottery. I've never known anyone to win the lottery that didn't buy a ticket. Yeah. And every day that you show up, you're buying a ticket. And every song that you write, you're buying a ticket. And you're giving yourself opportunities. Not a guarantee, but opportunities. And like you said, you have to keep at it. And immerse yourself in this business and this world, because we all want you to succeed, and find those people that will reach their hand out and give you a leg up, and do the same. When it happens for you, do the same for others.
Right. So just to wrap up, you've given tons of advice, and I'm grateful for it. Is there anything that we haven't talked about advice-wise that you would give either writers or artists that are coming into music, not necessarily just Nashville, but just wanting to move to Music City to make a living in music, whether it be on the artist side or on the business side? Because you're from the business side of things, but you're working with artists who are coming to connect with you specifically. But what's something that some things to do, some things maybe not to do?
Well, I think it's a couple things. I sort of say sometimes, if we don't see you, if we don't hear you, you don't exist. Somebody else has taken that place. So, there is, I think you come into this and you approach it from, you need to be out and about, but you need to be out at the right places. You have to be smart about this. You have to figure out where, if you're a young writer coming to this town, give yourself the best opportunities you can. Be out and play out.
Okay.
And I think the ratio of, I think you need to play out one night for example, and be out 4 or 5 or 6. I think being out is, because you never know who you're going to be standing next to. You never know who you're going to see on stage. You might go, wow, that's my next co-writer, or I think they have artist potential, and you start developing a relationship with them. And next thing you know, you're writing for their first record. These happy accidents happen. Mm-hmm. But I think you need to play out just so you give opportunity for people to see you. And I think there's certain venues that the industry, there's a good likelihood the industry will be at.
Okay. And can you, being in Nashville, can you name any ones that you would recommend people be?
Well, I'm always going to the local, or Belcourt Taps, or Douglas Corner, Third and Lindsley. I mean, there's a lot of those kind of places that the industry will be at. Mm-hmm. There's a good chance some of the industry will be there, and there's others. There's a lot of other places where the tourists are going to be.
Right.
And everybody's having a good time. And maybe you'll get fed playing at this venue. And maybe you'll get paid a little bit. And that's fun. And there's nothing wrong with that. But it might not be the smartest move to do a lot of that, because what's going to come from that?
Right.
Long term.
Sure.
Potentially.
Yeah.
So it's, and I'm a big fan of, if you're playing out at these venues, and especially if you're a young writer, you're going to find, I call it, you're going to find your class of people, mm-hmm. fellow writers to rise up with.
Right.
And that's typically going to be at the earlier shows, the 5 o'clock, 5:30, 6, 6:30 shows.
Okay.
And you want to be hanging around those folks and start making those relationships. And it's like high school. You sort of find your class, and if mm-hmm. somebody pops, everybody else rises up with that.
Right.
I have seen a lot of people come to town, and they think, okay, Willie did it this way, Waylon did it this way, let's go out and party and raise all kinds of craziness. And that's not the music business.
Right.
There might be a time and place for that, but there's not a lot of good that I've seen come from alcohol promises. People out having a good time, going, "Hey, we need to do this. We're going to shake up the world. Call me."
Yeah.
Well, they either didn't mean it, or they forgot they even said it.
Right.
And there is that world, and there's nothing wrong with that. But for me, it's about making smart decisions, hanging out at the right places, hanging out at the right times, giving yourself opportunities, and letting people see that you're out and about and being proactive. Mm-hmm. And eventually, somebody's going to take notice, and you're going to get invited into the next level.
Right. That's great. I could talk to you for another 2 hours, but I know you've got to go. You've got to go pitch some songs
I've got to go to work
to some labels and artists and things. So, thank you so much for your time, Bobby.
Marty. This was great. I appreciate it. I hope somebody can find. There's a lot of stuff was said. I hope somebody can find a nugget that is worthwhile that they can use.
Yeah, I think there's tons of them in here. So there's stuff that I'm going to put into practice myself. And I've been doing this for 20 years, and I'm always learning something new. So
amen.
Anytime we have to be students, always.
All of us.
There's always something to learn and to add to your repertoire and
right.
and add and to keep moving forward and building your career. So I appreciate your time and for sharing all of the knowledge that you have, and I know somebody's going to use it and be successful because of it.
Right back at you, man. This is a great thing that you're doing. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Have a great day. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us once again. Didn't I tell you how amazing Bobby Rymer was going to be? I mean, what a great conversation, and what a wealth of knowledge. He's done so much in this industry, and I'm a huge fan of his now, obviously, and grateful for his new friendship. So, man, I really want to make sure that you guys are taking this information to heart. Please put this into practice. He's giving you incredible information that you can use to help get your foot in the door and help make strides in your career and what you're trying to do in this industry, no matter if it's on the creative artist side, songwriter side, or on the business side. So there's something in here for you. There's lots of things in this episode for you that you can apply. So I hope you're taking it to heart and putting it into practice. Remember, Edenbrook Productions is here to help. If you need consulting services via phone call, Skype, or FaceTime, be sure to let us know how we can help you begin to make a living in the music industry.